your assigned seats and sit quietly while we're waiting everyone to join the class. Okay? Class, in the past few lessons, we learned how different inventions in the 19th century led to improvements of transportation and communication. Okay, we talked about several different things. Today, we are going to learn how the Transcontinental Railroad improved transportation in the 19th century. Okay, I'm going to display two different modes of transportation. So two different ways that people move to go to one place to the other. For instance, how did you guys get to school today? How did you guys get to school? By bus, by car? Did you walk? Okay, you walked. How did you get to school? Bus. Okay, we each took a different mode of transportation to get to our destination of school today, right? Okay? All right, I'm going to split you guys into two different groups. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to give you a number. And you're going to remember your number, okay? And if I give you the number 1, you're going to go to the right side of the classroom. Can everyone point to the right side of the classroom? If I give you 2, what side? You're going to the left side of the classroom. Can you guys point to the left side? Okay. All right, Marta, you're 1. Dave, you're 2. Okay? Okay, class, now that you are going to split into groups, I'm going to have one person from each line race to the finish line. Okay, and the finish line is right here, okay? But there is a trick. If you were in the first group, the teacher I told you, number 1, okay? So that means you're in the first group. You will be on your hands and feet the entire time, and you have to crawl to the finish line. This signifies walking back before these different modes of transportation were improved and advanced, right, and invented. Okay, which means you cannot use your feet to move. Okay, so if you're in group 1, what can you not do? You cannot use your feet. You cannot use your feet. Great. Okay, the second group, the kids that were told the number 2, Dave, you will run to the finish line. Okay, you can use your hands, you can use your feet. This is going to signify going by train. Okay, all right. So remember, we're not pushing, we're not shoving, we're being safe. And when you're done with the finish line, you're going to go back to your seat, and you're going to sit quietly and wait for everyone else. So when you're done with the finish line, where are you going to go?
To my seat.
All right. So class, you're going to line up group 1, group 2. Dave? Okay. Probably not in the way. Okay. All right. Group 1, group 2, race.
Go!
Ah! Okay, when you're done, you're going to return to your seat. So, what did you guys learn from this activity?
He went a lot faster than you did.
He went a lot faster than I did. So can we kind of make an assumption that maybe walking was a lot slower than going by train?
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever walked to school compared to rode a bike or even drove or rode a bus to school? It takes a lot longer, right? Okay, so all right, I will. So before people had to walk, which would take multiple days, and when the train got invented, it didn't take as long, right? Which is awesome. And now today, it's even faster, okay? So that advancement and those inventions really improved. So today we are going to learn about the Transcontinental Railroad and how it improved transportation for civilians in the 19th century. Okay, now before we begin, I'm going to review the objective, and I'm going to put it right here on the board. Okay? Given primary and secondary sources, the students will answer the short response question with 6 out of 8 questions correct or 75% accuracy based on the rubric. Okay, what is primary source? Okay, we learned about this earlier. This is a review of prior knowledge. Yes, Myrna?
It's where you get it directly?
That's where that person is actually there and does a direct account of what's happening. Okay? If a person isn't there, can they give a primary source account?
No.
No, they can't. What's a secondary source account? It's about someone that wasn't there but is recalling what happened, right? Based on primary sources, based on evidence, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So, our short answer response, I'm just going to pose that question to you guys now so you can keep that in your brain throughout the lesson, is explain how the Transcontinental Railroad improved transportation in the 19th century. So we're talking about a lot about transportation today, right? Okay? And now I'm going to display the rubric. The rubric. I know where the rubric is. Okay, I'm displaying the rubric. Right now that the rubric is displayed on the board, you're going to see is based on a point system, okay? The highest point you could possibly get is 4 points, and that's highlighted in the green. And that's correct answer and 2 in-text citations. And we already learned a little bit about in-text citations. That's where you cite directly from the text to support your answer, okay? And then 3 points would be correct answers and 2 in-text citations, but with no explanation. You gave your answer, you said this mode of transportation was improved, and you cited evidence, but you didn't explain it, okay? 2 would be that you did the correct answers, but only used 1 in-text citation and no explanations, which I know you guys want to, so that's not a worry. And then 1, only the correct answers, you didn't do in-text citation, and you didn't do the explanation. And of course, the other section is grammar, okay? Use capitalization and punctuation, 1 or less errors, okay? Everyone makes mistakes. If there's 1 error, okay, but no less than 1 error, okay? For the score of 3, use capitalization and punctuation between 2 to 4 errors. And then for 2, use capitalization and punctuation 4 or more errors, okay? Does everyone understand that rubric? Because we're going to be seeing it at the end, okay? All right. So now that we've reviewed the objective and reviewed the rubric, I'm going to go over the prior knowledge, okay? We've discussed in prior lessons the contributions of significant individuals in the Florida that contributed to how Florida is today, right? The economy, how transportation, everything, right? We also talked about analyzing primary and secondary sources, and we already reviewed a little bit what primary and secondary sources were earlier. And we also looked into 19th century advancements in canals, roads, steamboats, flatboats, overland wagons, and the Pony Express. The invention of the steam engine dramatically improved shipping by water and created a new transportation industry, the railroad. By the end of the century, some steam locomotives began to be powered by electricity. At the time of the Americans' founding, most people lived their entire lives in their local communities, okay? The local transportation was by walking, riding a horse, or riding a wagon or carriage pulled by a horse for distances of a few miles. They couldn't travel across the country. And we're going to learn today how the railroad gave people that opportunity and really changed the world where we are today, right? Okay. I am going to display a primary source document, and we remember what a primary source document is, right? That's an account from someone that was actually there the day that the Transcontinental Railroad was fully finished and built, okay? So this is a picture displayed. The Transcontinental Railroad was completed on May 10th, 1869. It's a long time ago, right? When 4 ceremonial gold and silver spikes were driven into a Laurel Wood Railroad tip at Promontory Summit, northwest of Salt Lake City, Utah. This act joined 1,776 miles of rails belonging to the Union and Central Pacific Railroads. We already learned about a little bit about those, right? The Union Pacific engine 119 is on the left, and the Central Pacific Jupiter is on the right, okay? And this can you point out anything from this document that you can see? There's a lot of people there, right?
There is.
Okay, can you tell me more? Watching. So was this a major event in history?
Sounds like it was a celebration. There was a lot of people there.
Yeah, that sounds like a major
There's
event
even a guy
in history.
up on a flagpole.
Class, if you look at the board, a primary source picture of the day the Transcontinental Railroad was completed on May 10th, 1869. Okay? Now, I am going to pose a question to you guys. Okay? You will respond in your journal. When you are finished, you will turn and talk with your assigned shoulder partner. Okay?
Okay.
Point to your assigned shoulder partner. We all know where assigned shoulder partner is. You're going to write your assigned shoulder partner's answer right below, and you're going to have them sign it so I know that you worked with your shoulder partner.
Okay.
Okay? And when you're done, you're going to come up with one answer. We're going to write it on the whiteboard, okay? Does everyone understand?
Yes.
Okay. So, predict what impact the Transcontinental Railroad had on people in the 19th century. We learned a little bit, okay? We're going to go further in depth, but I want to see where your knowledge is at right now. Predict what impact the Transcontinental Railroad had on people in the 19th century. Okay? Turn and talk to your partner. What do you think?
The railroad allowed people to travel and goods could be transported across the country.
Hey, make sure you're talking with your partner.
And that It's cited in the article that that's what they did, and they're in the picture.
I love how you were citing things from the primary source because we're going to be using this to answer a short response answer.
And they must have been pretty excited about being able to have
Yeah.
those opportunities,
Come on, Cubby.
right? What do you
Right. All right. So you make sure you hold up your answer when you have one answer on your whiteboard. So you talked about how it improved transportation and goods, okay? So you didn't even just say transportation, you also said goods, right? Because can you imagine them carrying wagons of just goods? Not very far. I mean, they wouldn't get very far compared to a train, right?
think?
We can all agree with that? Okay, now I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint presentation. Okay. Okay, effects of the railroad east to west. People couldn't get to places faster before the railroad was made. We already kind of talked about that. They used carriages, horses, walking, right? When the railroad first opened through the west to east, among the many positive effects of the Transcontinental Railroad are the following improvements. Faster and safer transportation coast to coast. Okay, we already learned that there was railroads north to south, right? But what happened to California? You know, we lost complete communication. What if they're advancing and stuff that we need? Okay, that's really important that we were able to get to all parts of our country, and now we can. And now look where we are, right? A boost in international trade. So, and intercontinental trade. So this is where California is able to trade their goods with Florida, or Florida is able to trade their goods with New York, right?
They had different.
Yes. Faster spreading of ideas and expansion of the United States into areas not previously settled. So people that were stuck there their whole lives because it would take them to walk such distances can now take a train and explore new areas, settle in new areas, which then caused us to have a higher population, right? Because then we can go more areas, we can use more food, everything. Okay?
More access.
Yes, more access to things. Okay, so I am going to present a question. You will answer the question on the whiteboard independently, okay? So you can't try and talk to your partner. I want you to do it independently. Okay, what were the 3 effects of the Transcontinental Railroad? We talked about them on the PowerPoint. If you need to refer back to the PowerPoint, we can.
What was the question again?
What were the 3 effects of the Transcontinental Railroad? What happened because of the Transcontinental Railroad being built? Okay, we talked about intercontinental trade, which means trading within the country.
Yep.
Improvement of communication, safer transport.
Ideas.
Exactly, right? Okay, you're gonna hold that up when you're done. So Dave, you said trade, transportation of trade, right? So they can transport goods a lot easier, so then we can make more money, right?
Right.
Which then increases the the United States economy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now that I've seen all your whiteboards. Okay. The Transcontinental Railroad was a key factor in the industrial development of the United States. Before the railroad's completion, rail lines had a limited reach, okay? We talked about how it can go across the nation, right? That wasn't possible. And supplies could only be transported through laborious animal hauling. Because of this, the standard of living and wealth throughout much of the country was lower than in the industrialized, developed areas. Food, medicine, and education were all affected by transportation limits. So because they weren't able to transport things, everything was affected. Food, medicine, I mean, imagine you sitting at home and you get hurt. How are you going to get to, there's no ambulance, there's nothing. You have to walk to, and even if there is a hospital, you know, so the health rate wasn't as good back then. Now we have ambulances and we have many other things that we can use to be rushed to the hospital so we can get that fast care, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I never really thought about that.
All right. So now you are going to respond to another question on your whiteboard after we finish this slide. In your opinion, what was the importance of the Transcontinental Railroad? Okay, you just gotta give me one thing. What was the importance? did you say? Allowed travel to get things. Awesome.
Goods, services,
Yeah.
explore.
And you said travel to new areas. They were able to expand. They were able to go to that areas where they may even, I mean, what if you were in Florida and you wanted to go to California and you never knew?
Right.
Now you could take that railroad and you could figure it out if you wanted to stay there, right? We have that option today, but we take that for granted sometimes, right? People back then didn't have that option. Okay, I'm going to pass out a secondary source document to you guys, okay? And I want you to pull out your highlighter because we're going to be highlighting key facts. And remember, at the end, part of our ACE template and a part of everything else, we're going to be needing to cite evidence from this text. So it's very important that you underline, okay?
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we already learned how communications were important. We learned that the telegraph line would put the Pony Express out of business, right? So now we're going to figure out, but although communications were important, what was needed, everyone realized, was a transcontinental railroad to carry passengers and freight quickly, safely, and cheaply across the vast, unsettled parts of the country and to tie California firmly to the Union. Make sure we underline that sentence. That's a very important sentence. Southern states pushed for the southern route, but after they rebelled in 1861, Congress passed the Pacific Railroad Act in 1862. This called for a route that followed the Platte River in Nebraska and then used the South Pass in southwest Wyoming to cross the Rocky Mountains. The eastern terminal was in the Council Bluffs, Iowa across the Missouri River from Omaha, and the western terminal, Sacramento. The Central Pacific began construction on January 8, 1863. Because California then had almost no manufacturing, all the rails, rolling stock, and heavy construction equipment had to be shipped from East Coast parts, either around Cape Horn or overland via Panama. Well, now that they're building this and once they're done, they won't have to do that anymore, right? So this was the last big feat that they had to determine. Okay, in 5 years, the Central Pacific had only advanced 132 miles to Nevada, but after that, it was able to move quickly across the rest of the state and into Utah, reaching Reno in just 1 year. Yes, there's a lot of rough terrain where they, workers were making $30 an hour and they had Chinese immigrants come in. And it was a lot of hard, grueling labor. The route that ran along the North Platte River and then through the South Pass had been ideal for wagon trains, which needed to be in river valleys for water and pasturage, and it was lower possible through the mountains. But the route of immigrant trails was not as good for the railroads. The line reached Cheyenne, in which now is Wyoming, in December 1867, having advanced 270 miles that year. The next spring, it intended to push through the Evans Pass at 8,247 feet.
Oh my
The
gosh.
highest point of transcontinental railroad. Now let's think. That's kind of important, right? That sentence? Because imagine if someone had to walk that. Could they? No. So let's keep thinking, okay? By December 1868, the Union Pacific had laid an additional 360 miles of track, including across the Green River, the last major waterway on the route. When the line crossed into the Utah Territory, it hired many Mormon workers to complete it. Finally, on May 10, 1869, the two railroads met at the summit in Utah, one of the great engineering feats of the 19th century. That's where we saw in that primary source document in the beginning how many people were there. That was a major part of history, and we're even learning about it today, hundreds and hundreds of years later, right? California was now firmly tied to the Union, and the world had struck remarkably. Only 4 years later, Jules Verne published Around the World in 80 Days. In the novel, Phineas Fogg boards the Transcontinental Railroad from San Francisco to New York, demonstrating how the railroad had captured the popular imagination. Thanks to the Transcontinental Railroad, the time frame imagined by Verne was now possible. So now with this, we can now travel to California to New York, right? Which was never possible before. The building of the railroad network in the United States contributed to the growth of a nationwide market economy. So that improved everything, right? In which goods were transported more quickly and cheaply. Make sure we're underlining this part, which goods were transported more quickly and cheaply, helping improve the quality of life by raising incomes and reducing prices, right? Because they can get other places cheaper and faster, right? Improved transportation linked sources of raw materials, farms, factories, and consumers from different parts of the country, and a new national economy facilitated the rise of big business and smaller business for local markets. Okay? All right, so now that we have underlined and underlined the key phrases, I'm going to pass out the ACE template. And this is the template that you are going to use. It's right here. This is the template that we're going to use to help answer our short answer response question, to make sure we answer it fully and we get a great job. We get all 4s on a rubric, so we get total 8 points, right? Okay, so I'm going to put this ACE chart on the board, okay, and I'm going to run through how to do it first to kind of explain it to you guys, okay? So you see that there are 3 sections, right? First, you answer the question, okay? Do you remember what the question was? Explain how the Transcontinental Railroad improved transportation in the 19th century. It improved transportation by making it fast and easy, okay? I answered it, okay? You can either use I think that, I believe that, okay? I did different kind of things that you can use, but if you want to come up with your own, that's fine. It was just kind of like a guide, okay? So I think that the Transcontinental Railroad improved transportation because it was quicker and faster, okay? I'm going back to the text
To cite.
to cite my evidence, okay? Right? And I'm going to use, but although communications were important, what was needed, everyone realized, was a transcontinental railroad to carry passengers and freight quickly, safely, and cheaply across the vast, unsettled parts of the country, okay? So, but when you say that, you have to cite it directly from the text. What can't we forget?
Quotation.
We have to remember quotation marks, because when you pull something from a text and you don't put in your own words, that's plagiarizing, okay? So that's why we say on page 3, it states, quotation mark, but although communications were important, okay? So now that you have to have 2 citations, you have to pull 2 sentences from the text. Then after that, you explain it. You explain how those citations in your text help support your answer. How did it make it go fast and easy? Well, because
You traveled faster.
it traveled faster.
It could go higher speeds.
Exactly. Okay? Okay? Now I'm going to break you into your assigned partners. Okay? Alright class, now that we have reviewed the primary and secondary sources of how the Transcontinental Railroad improved transportation, you will work with your assigned partners to fill in the ACE chart. And I just showed you how to fill it in, okay? It is important you take this seriously, because this is a planning template to help you write your short answer response questions during your independent practice. You will be able to keep these for your short answer response questions, so make sure you answer it, okay, fully, okay? You're going to work quietly and you're going to bring the ACE template to me when you are finished before you can move on to the independent practice. Because I'm going to give you some feedback and make sure we're getting all 8 on a rubric, right? We're understanding the concept, and if you guys have more questions, that way I'll know, okay? Alright, so when you guys go ahead and go into your partners, you're going to start filling the ACE template. Make sure you use your primary and secondary source documents. Okay, so now that you guys have finished the ACE template, you're going to write each of your answers on your whiteboard. Oh, no. Okay, I'm going to check it. Okay, so for your answer, you said it increased communication. Okay, I like that you cited from the text. Okay, but make sure you put exactly where you cited from the text. So make sure we use those quotation marks, okay? Okay, and you explained your answer. Great job, okay? Make sure you take my feedback before you go to the independent practice. All right, Dave, so for your answer, you said it improved trade and transportation, and you also cited great evidence from the text, okay? But maybe let's come up with another one, okay? And you did a great job of explaining. Okay, so maybe just add one more in-text citation, but great job using those quotation marks and stating where it was from the text. Okay? Okay, so now that we have reviewed, as a whole class, each of your ACE templates, and I give you some feedback, we reviewed your guys' ACE template, I am going to review some of the key parts of the lesson before we move on, okay? Because I want you guys to be successful. Okay, can someone tell me one thing they learned from this lesson? Yeah.
That the Transcontinental Railroad allowed us to move across the country faster.
Okay, so now we already reviewed the rubric earlier. I'm going to display it on the board, and I also passed you out a copy, okay? So when we're answering the questions, make sure we're reviewing to the rubric, and before you turn it in, look at the rubric and make sure you answered your questions fully, okay? When you are done, you are going to read independently and silently at your desk, all right? Go ahead and start. All right, now that you guys are done, okay? Thank you for turning them in. Okay, today we learned about the importance of the Transcontinental Railroad in improving transportation and how it almost ties into the real world connections of today in our daily life. We do take modes of transportation every day to get to school, and it just differed in the 19th century. And without those inventions and everything else, we wouldn't be where we are today, maybe, right? Okay, so I'm going to have you write one thing that you learned from the lesson on your whiteboards and hold up your answers when you are finished. Okay, so now that you guys are done, Marta, what's one thing you learned?
That the railroad helped people make them happier by being able to travel.
Right, they could travel all the way to California. They were never given that opportunity. And Dave,
Yeah, well,
you said about how transportation was improved with commerce. That's a big word. It's a big word. Okay. All right, now on the board is displayed as 3 exit tickets questions, okay? When you're done, you're going to turn it in to me, okay? You're going to answer the question fully. Okay, the first question, the most significant reason for building the Transcontinental Railroad was improving trade, improving transportation, right? Okay, and what would have happened if the 2 railroads didn't join to form the Transcontinental Railroad? What might have happened? Do you think we'd be where we are today?
No.
we couldn't have got across this country.
Yeah, we couldn't have gone across the country. We wouldn't be as advanced as we are today.
We'd be like 2 different countries.
Exactly, we would be 2 different countries. I like that. Okay, and then contrast the mode of transportation you used to come to school today to the students' modes of transportation to school in the 19th century. So how did it differ? So in the 19th century, in the 18th century, how did they get to school?
Walked.
They walked. So in the 19th century, what did they do? Maybe a train to school? How did you get to school today?
A bus.
A bus. And you said walking?
Took my bike.
All right. So you took your bike. Okay. That's sure a lot faster than walking, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for a great lesson. And you guys all met the objective today because you all scored 8 out of 8 points based on the rubric. So great job.